Pleasant viewing. Welcome to our news on QTV. We take a look at stories making headlines in our news. The Ministry of Information and Broadcasting Services has clarified that Cabinet has not formally adopted the proposed Access to Information ATI bill. And 5 juveniles of the same family in Chief Shakumbila's area in SUMBWE district have been burnt to death in a suspected case of arson. And now details in our news. Minister of Information and Broadcasting Services has clarified that Cabinet has not formally adopted the proposed Access to Information ATI bill. Permanent Secretary Chanda Kasolo has explained that the earlier announced approval of the ATI bill by Cabinet was done in principle with directives to make specific changes to the legislation. Mr. Kasolo has told Q News in an exclusive interview that Cabinet has since ordered other pieces of legislation to be aligned with what the ATI bill seeks to achieve. He states that this is with the view that the Republican Constitution is not concluded by the existence of the ATI law. Mr. Kasolo notes that this explains why his ministry has never stated at any point that the ATI bill has been adopted by Cabinet, but has only informed the nation that the bill has been approved. He says as Permanent Secretary, he is therefore not in the position to discuss the details of the approved piece of legislation.
Approval by Cabinet is in two forms. One is that they approve and they give conditions for it. They ask you to do certain things, which is what happened. We have been assigned to ensure that certain bits of legislation are in line with what we're trying to do and make sure that the Constitution is not conflicted. Then the other way is they can approve and adopt the bill.
Okay.
And nobody, my minister or myself, has ever referred to adoption of the bill. We said it had been approved. And the approval, therefore, was tantamount to giving us certain things we must fulfill before Parliament says, before Cabinet adopts the bill. So it's not yet adopted by the Cabinet. And for that reason, I can't even talk about the details of that bill.
5 juvenile girls aged between 12 and 17 of the same family in Chief Shakumbila's area of SUMBWE district in Central Province have been burnt to death in a suspected case of arson. Police spokesperson Esther Katongo says the incident happened after the grass-thatched house they were sleeping in caught fire at around 22 and 23 hours. Mrs. Kasolo disclosed that preliminary investigations have shown that the house was set ablaze by unknown people as the door was found locked from outside using a chain. She says police received a report from Cletus Mwemba, age 39, that the deceased, namely Mabel Mwemba, Gertrude Mwemba, and Jean Mwemba, all age 17, Nora Milimo, age 15, and Emily Milimo, age 12, were burnt to death while they were sleeping. Mrs. Katongo says the cause of the fire has not yet been established, and investigations into the matter have been instituted, while the bodies of the deceased have been deposited in the Nampundwe mortuary.
We received a sad report of suspected arson in which 5 female juveniles were burnt to death in SUMBWE after a grass-thatched house they were sleeping in was gutted. The report was made by Cletus Mwemba, age 39, that all his 5 female children got burnt in the fire. This happened on 6th July between 22 hours and 23 hours in SUMBWE district. Bodies of the deceased have been deposited in Nampundwe Hospital mortuary. The cause of the fire is not yet known, and investigations have been instituted in the matter.
Meanwhile, Disaster Management and Mitigation Unit DMMU National Coordinator Chanda Kabwe has described the incidents as sad and regrettable. Mr. Kabwe, in a statement made available to Q News, says DMMU will be on the ground to provide assistance to the bereaved family in terms of all logistical requirements. President Edgar Lungu has made a strong appeal to the clergy to sincerely pray for the people of Zambia so they can make right decisions when electing political leaders. President Lungu lamented that his strongest fear is that as the country gets closer to the 2021 general elections, there will be a lot of politicians who would want to mislead the people, especially Christians, in order to be voted into political offices. Zanis reports that President Lungu made the appeal when he attended a church service at Chambesi Pentecostal Holiness in Chambeshi on Sunday morning in Kalulushi district. He urged church leaders to pray and guide the people on the importance of voting for right leaders. Anchambeshi Apostolic Church Reverend Moffat Kakuyo, in his sermon and reading from Isaiah 40 verse 31 and Luke 19 verse 30, reminded congregants that God has a special way of choosing leaders. President Lungu was accompanied to the service by his Special Assistant for Press and Public Relations, Isaac Chibampe, Area Member of Parliament, Kampamba Chewe, who is also Livestock and Fisheries Minister, a National Development Planning Minister, who is also Nkana Constituency Lawmaker, Alexander Chiteme, Presidential Affairs Minister Freedom Sekazwe, Corporate Minister Jaffin Mwakalombe, and Minister of General Education David Mawumba, among others, were also in attendance. The opposition United Liberal Party ULP has withdrawn its praise for the ruling Patriotic Front over the delay to enact the Access to Information ATI bill into law. ULP President Sakoiba Scotta says his party finds it disappointing that after assuring the Zambian people the ATI bill would be into law, it is now holding back from doing so. Mr. Scotta is of the view that all the legislation government is claiming are holding back the enactment of ATI bill should have been paramount before making any promises to the people. In an exclusive interview with Q News, Mr. Scotta says as one of the Zambian people who praised the promise to enact the ATI bill, he feels that government should honor up to its promise. Mr. Scotta supports those who think this legislation can and will help in the fight against corruption in Zambia if passed into law.
It is disappointing that after they had made statements that they are going to be introducing this access to information bill, that now they're saying they're holding back, because all of these things they're saying they still want to do first should have been paramount and in their minds when they were letting people believe that they're going to introduce the legislation. I was one of the people who stood up and really praised them for that, because I feel that it is an important step. So now that they're taking that back, I also have to take back the praise that I gave and say that they must, in order to reach the minimum standards of wishing to fight corruption, enact that bill. The bill does take into account concerns about national security and so on. Those are taken into account. So to say that you're still looking at defense doesn't hold water for me. And where was the Minister of Defense when they were discussing it in Cabinet?
Government has assured the nation that it is fully capable of handling the hunger situation in the country. Minister in the Office of the Vice President, Sylvia Chalikosa, says the country has enough food stock and it is food secure. Ms. Chalikosa says despite this guarantee, what is needed is information on where government is required to distribute relief food in the hunger-stricken areas.
But the need to declare the country or to declare certain areas as a national disaster has different repercussions. It will imply that the government is not able to contend with the situation. It's not just government that is responding to this situation. We have people from private sector, people from church organizations, international organizations who are doing independent studies. And what we need to do is to bring all these reports together so that we know who is working where and on what. Because as a country, we have enough stocks, food security is there, it's guaranteed. But what we need to look at is the nitty-gritties. Where do we need to improve in terms of distribution? Is it the logistics aspect? Do we have enough transportation so that we can reach the target groups? That is where we need to sit down and share information and address the issues. But in terms of food security, the country is food secure. It's just a question of managing the distribution.
The Bible Gospel in Africa Church in Africa Bigoka has launched the first ever Healthy Sunday in the country, which will be a day dedicated to promoting the healthy living among church members. The Health Sunday, which has been designated as an annual event, is aimed at encouraging church members to seek medical services such as blood pressure checkups, diabetes checkups, and cancer screening, among others. And Bigoka Church Archbishop Peter Ndlovu says the launch of the Health Sunday is aimed at complementing government's efforts towards the fight against non-communicable diseases.
The Bible Gospel Church in Africa, in its mission statement, it says it shall sustain good health. And we want to be practical in good health. His Excellency Dr. Edgar Chabalungu has shown an example by doing the physical exercises. And I believe that should be emulated by many. So that as we emulate, we can develop a health nation. A health pastor can be productive. A health community can be productive.
Speaking at the same launch, Health Minister Chitalu Chilufya, who officiated at the event, commended the church for taking a bold decision in supporting President Edgar Lungu's bid to fight non-communicable diseases. Dr. Chilufya says government recognizes the critical role the church plays in the delivery of healthcare services to the people.
And if the church leadership took pole position in promoting health, then the country will be healthy and the country will be wealthier. I've always said we may have the messages and the knowledge in the health sector. We may not be endowed with the same skill, with the same grace, with the same favor that the clergy have in communicating with impact to the audience and ensuring that there is behavioral change. So there should be an inextricable relationship between the clergy and us in the health sector in pushing for the health of our people in the country. And what you're showing today, Bishop, is exactly that. Congratulations, Bishop. For us in the Patriotic Party, led by His Excellency Mr. Edgar Chabalungu, we believe in universal health coverage. Universal health coverage means all citizens must access health services. And
All People's Congress Party leader has criticized government for attacking bilateral donors for publicly expressing their concerns on corruption and misuse of donor funds in the country. Chief Government spokesperson Dorasilia has been reported in one of the local tabloids to have, during her recent briefing and media interaction, stated that inasmuch as government appreciates counsel from cooperating partners against the country's fight against corruption, there are channels through which such issues can be discussed other than doing it publicly. But Mr. Msoni has argued that donor funders and cooperating partners are entitled to publicly question government on issues of corruption and misuse of funds if they feel the available diplomatic channels they have been given to do so have failed them. Mr. Msoni says it is surprising, to say the least, for a senior government official to justify corruption in the country and further criticize cooperating partners for speaking out.
Western donors, our bilateral donors accredited to our country, are entitled to question government, are entitled to question government propriety in terms of how government is managing those funds. But if they feel that diplomatic channels through which they have used previously have failed them, then they are perfectly entitled to openly and publicly denounce corruption. Corruption in this country has taken root
to such an extent that the poor are being deprived of the much needed resources, resulting in our hospitals having no medicines, having no equipment. And so we are even shocked that a serious government would say that Zambians are obsessed with the corruption talk, the talk on corruption. On the other hand, justifying that corruption is not just in government, even in the private sector. But how can a serious government point to another wrong and say, look, even in another country or in other countries there's corruption? So it means that this government is saying that citizens, Zambian citizens, should not talk about corruption in government. The citizens should keep quiet, knowing very well that there's something wrong going on. I think this government ought to be serious with the fight of corruption.
Finally, in our news, Indian female scientists have invented a more specific solution for eliminating 4 armyworms, which they intend to replicate in Zambia through the comprehensive 4 management strategy, which is a plant-based confinement. Young armyworms will start to starve to death as feeding is disrupted due to the application of biological formulation. The women scientists are from Ambala in the Indian state of Haryana, working for a 2-decade-old multinational company, Pijat Industries, which has offices in London, Russia and Mali in West Africa. Company director Vikram Anand says efforts started when the 4 armyworms, fondly known as New Age locusts, appeared in India in 2017 for the first time. Mr. Anand says that the company is willing to send a team of scientists to Zambia for joint efforts in eliminating the worms and can build a pesticide manufacturing facility in the country if the country is interested. And Mr. Anand says scientists have further taken care of resistance by 4 armyworms to achieve high yields, adding that his scientists also respect global environmental impact and safety, as recommended by the Food and Agriculture Organization FAO and other agencies involved in agriculture chemical control. This came to light when Zambia's High Commissioner to India, Judith Kabijimpanga, toured Pijat Industries research and development facilities in Ambala in the Indian state of Haryana. Press Secretary, Press and Tourism at the Zambian Mission in India, Bangwe Navide, has more in this report.
Indian scientists have invented a more specific formulation, PIPL 1140, to eliminate 4 armyworms, a move they want replicated in Zambia. Through the comprehensive farm management strategy, a plant-based contrafeedant would see the young worms starve to death as feeding is disrupted due to the application of biological formulation. The women scientists are from Ambala in the Indian state of Haryana, working for a 2-decade-old multinational company, Pijat Industries, which has offices in London, Russia and Mali in West Africa. Zambia's High Commissioner to India, Judith Kabijimpanga, toured Pijat Industries research and development facilities in Ambala in the Indian state of Haryana. Company director Vikram Anand says efforts started when 4 armyworms, fondly known as New Age locusts, appeared in India in 2017 for the first time.
The armyworm has really been a pest in our country.
We will send our experts, we will send our scientists. Thank you so much for making this very long visit.
Agricultural fields get damaged quickly as one female 4 armyworm lays about 400 eggs in its 4-day lifespan. Bangwenavile, Haryana, India.
To end the news recap on stories making headlines, the Minister of Information and Broadcasting Services has clarified that Cabinet has not formally adopted the proposed Access to Information ATI bill. And 5 juveniles of the same family in Chief Shakumbila's area of Shibayunji district have been burnt to death in a suspected case of arson. On that note, we come to the end of the news. Thank you for watching.